On May 22nd of 2019, deputies from the San Jacinto County Sheriff's Office in Texas were dispatched to a deeply wooded area of the Sam Houston National Forest after receiving a 911 call regarding a deceased adult female discovered there. The female was identified as 59-year-old Rhonda Richardson. She was a corrections officer with the Pulaski unit of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice at the time. Rhonda lived very close to the area where her body was found. She was found face down and she was scalped. San Jacinto County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Gary Sharpen said that a set of ATV tire track impressions were found next to the body. He also said it was strange for Rhonda to be in the woods because she was afraid of the woods, particularly snakes and other animals. Gary Sharpen was involved in creating a timeline of events leading up to her body being discovered. He said the day before, Rhonda's dogs had run off into the national forest. She then went around asking some of her neighbors to help her look for the dogs. One of the people that volunteered to help was her neighbor Robert Dale Clary. Several witnesses told investigators that Clary was the last person seen with Rhonda. Clary was also the person who found Rhonda's body, according to Sergeant Gary Sharpen. Instead of calling 911 to report finding his neighbor's body, Clary went and spoke with several family members about the discovery. He never even called 911. He didn't stop and call authorities. He didn't do anything, Sharpen said. I mean, just that alone was really odd and bizarre. In addition to not calling the police, Clary's behavior also included him returning to the area where he found Rhonda's body and taking several photographs and bringing his nephew to the body and telling him to call 911. Authorities believed Clary was responsible, but unfortunately lacked sufficient evidence for an arrest. Sharpen says in recent years investigators were able to obtain new information. Cell phone technology placed Clary and Rhonda both on the trail where she was found when Rhonda's phone showed she stopped moving. An additional witness also came forward and provided critical information for investigators. Criminal District Attorney for San Jacinto County Todd Dillon said, "We happened across a witness in this case that we knew was out there, but we had never been able to identify or locate. We happened across this witness, and it really was just the last piece of the puzzle we needed to get a warrant." This all led to 65-year-old Robert Dale Clary being arrested in November of 2022 for taking Rhonda's life and dumping her body in the woods. Clary had reportedly been charged with one count of indecency with a child in 2007 and served time behind bars after being convicted on 3 separate driving while intoxicated charges. He is currently being held in the San Jacinto jail on a $750,000 bond.
My story takes place in a small countryside in the south. As I tell you this story, it has now been 2 years since it happened. I was 13 years old. One evening, my parents decided to go have dinner at a friend's house, but I preferred to stay home. It was a Friday night, and I was tired. It's actually quite common for my parents to leave me alone at home in the evening, because I rarely go with them when they go out to eat or to parties. So, I'm used to being alone at night. I must admit that I often have this feeling of being watched when I'm home alone, whether it's day or night, but I always thought it was just paranoia, until that night. So, we're at the infamous night when my parents go to dinner at a friend's house and leave me alone. I'm watching TV on the couch with my cat, and then I decide to go back to my room to be on my phone. After several minutes, I hear noises coming from the kitchen, but that is common. But once again, I chalk it up to fatigue and stress. Then, a little later, I hear what sounds like glass being placed on the dining table. The stress becomes more and more intense, and I do the dumbest thing to do in those moments. I went to see, and there was indeed a glass on the dining table. It couldn't have been me because I always have a bottle in my room, and I only drink from it. The stress rises even more, but at the same time, I prefer to stay in denial and tell myself that I left the glass on the table while clearing it. As I'm about to return to my room, I hear something scratching behind the garage door. I'm about to open it, thinking it's my cat wanting to come in, but I freeze when I reach for the handle, and I remember that my cat was on the couch with me earlier. So, I turn my head to check if he's still there, and unfortunately he is, and so is my dog. At that moment, I'm genuinely worried, and I rush back to my room. But on the way back, I notice that my parents' bedroom window and the bathroom window are wide open. I didn't know what to do, so I locked myself in my room with my cat and dog and scrolled through TikTok, trying to forget about this incident. When my parents came back, I acted as if nothing had happened. I was backpacking through Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina with my dog. Just the two of us, and we were exploring the woods around Little Lost Cove, open orienteering style, so we were not on an established trail. We'd been hiking throughout the day following a creek, and toward the evening, I noticed my dog was acting abnormally. She was very much caught in a scent of something and wouldn't ease up. This continued for about 2 hours before we made camp. That night in camp, she remained on edge and staring off into the woodline. I went about camp business as usual. Then, at around midnight, I got this prickle like I was being watched intently. I let the feeling ride for a bit and kept tinkering with the fire. Then I heard the brush rustle. I got up from the fire and shone my flashlight up in the hillside. A figure on all fours just managed to escape the beam, all but the tail. It was a tail I knew was not supposed to still exist in the southern Appalachians. I cast my light again across the hillside, and this time I caught its eyes. 2 glowing yellow orbs, just watching and waiting. At this point, I went into a fury, grabbed my tomahawk, and charged up the hill after the beast, screaming curses all the while. The watcher ran off. The following morning, we left camp at first light and began hiking up the mountain to the ridgeline which would lead us out. Atop the ridgeline in the fresh mud were a series of tracks left by an animal that officially no longer exists in the eastern U.S. They were catamount tracks. They commonly go by cougars in the east, but we'd been stalked by a mountain lion just the same. Those tracks ran across the ridge, revealing that it had been watching and stalking us throughout the previous day as we hiked through the creek bed below. I truly believe that if my dog hadn't given me red flags, I would have been mauled that night.